As I said earlier in the service today, we start the second half of our summer and focus on the magic of the soul. This week on Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to start that class by the same name. And we've spent the last 6 weeks focused on big magic, and being creative and living fearlessly. And now we turn to the source of all of that, everything in our experiences, which is our soul. You know, you've heard this phrase many, many times. I'll put it on the screen. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. How many of you heard that before, right? We've heard it so many times. But what does it really, really mean? What it means is that at our core, we are spiritual in nature. And that spiritual part of us lives in what I call a magic suit, lives inside a body. And the spiritual self uses the body to experience everything it can on this human plane. Our spiritual self uses our 5 senses to see everything it can see, to hear all the amazing sounds it can hear, to touch everything it can touch, to taste everything. It's just simply using those 5 senses to experience the world around us. The purpose of the human experience, in all their wide variety actually, is to show the soul a good time, right? And to help the soul evolve toward being a greater source of love and light, a greater leader in our experiences, and move us towards oneness or love and away from division and fear. So everything that shows up is a part of that, right? So over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be focusing our lessons on how to shift the interpretation of our life and everything that happens away from the perspective of the human ego and toward the perspective of the soul. But how do we do that? How do we shift from being grounded in our humanness to being empowered and free in our spiritualness? And I don't even know that that's a word, I just made it up. Spiritualness, right? So I'm going to talk about that today. And while you listen today, I want us to do something new and different. I'm going to have Rebecca put a phone number up on the screen. It actually happens to be the cell phone number of the center, and it's Laine over there. So as I talk about different concepts, if you can think of a question, I want you to text it anonymously to that phone number. She's just going to leave that on the screen. So at the end of the service, I'm going to try to answer some of those questions. So it's going to be a little bit interactive today. And whether you're in the room right now or you're watching live, if you watch it later, sorry, I can't do your questions, but I will look at them in a little bit, right? So you can ask things about your life. You can ask about an example of what I'm talking about or whatever you want to ask. Now I'll decide whether I want to answer your questions. So we can.
Randy.
That reminder was for Randy. So obviously, the strongest example that I have of this shift from the human ego perspective to the soul perspective, and the one that I can speak about with the most authority, is my own. So today, I thought I would spend some time sharing some of the things that I have learned that helped me move from looking at everything happening around me from an egoic viewpoint to looking at the same things happening around me from a spiritual perspective. And I thought I would share some of the major thought changes. We teach change your thinking, change your life. What are some of the thinking changes that I made that were the most powerful to me? So my lesson is called Finding My Soul, because I had to find my soul in order to live from it. That's what I've been practicing and doing for the past 22 years now. So first I want to describe myself before my soul shift, okay? So up until around the age 36, is there anybody in the room less than 36 years old? Oh my God, thank you. I'm so glad. Most of us are really old. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. So up until around the age of 36, I was living life just like everybody around me, just like everyone. I was trying to make my life acceptable to myself, right? And to gain acceptance from the world around me. The choices I made were to try and be successful, and most importantly, to fit in, right? To fit in and belong. So once I had survived my childhood, now I've described my childhood a little bit, but it was filled with struggle and violence and rage and fundamentalist religiosity and instability. After I had survived all of that, I went to college and to grad school so that I could be a professional, like be normal and try to fit in and to improve my life through education, because I was taught my whole life, education is the doorway to make change in your life, right? So I'm going through whatever door they tell me to go through, I'm going through it. And I wanted to help people survive their lives too, because often we get called to do things to react to whatever mess we were in. We kind of become something like that. So I majored in behavioral science and counseling. And each career move I made was to help people and to make more money and to try to thrive in a big city. Because I grew up in a little small town. I wanted to live in a big city. Atlanta counted. It was big. And I tried everything to fit in. I tried to find the most acceptable partner. I wanted to have a child and a house and a dog because that's just what I thought normal people did. And I was highly competitive. And I wasn't cutthroat, but I was trying to win. I was trying to win. I wanted to squirrel away victories and not defeats. That was the whole point. And quite frankly, if you weren't right in my circle, really didn't care about you. I was trying to survive right here. If you hurt me, you were my enemy. If you helped me, I loved you. I was afraid a lot. I was afraid of losing. I was afraid of suffering. I was afraid of not belonging. I was afraid of other people's judgments. I was afraid of the economy, of crime, of violence, of so many things. I was just afraid. And I was angry. I was angry about a lot of stuff. And I was jealous. When other people had things I didn't have, I was jealous. I was angry at anybody who hurt me in any way. I was jealous of people who had easier success or better circumstances, or maybe they started life off better than I did. I was just jealous. And all of that was exhausting. And I wished I had better tools to deal with the conflicts I found myself in and the problems I felt like I needed to solve, the suffering that I felt, and the overwhelming sense of helplessness. I didn't feel very lucky. I didn't feel very lucky with the cards that had been dealt to me in my life. And I had no clear idea of how to make my life feel better. I was able to make it look better, but not feel better. And quite frankly, no one around me was feeling much better than I was. Everyone seemed frustrated and angry and afraid and insecure and trying their best to rise above difficulties. And we were all striving to feel worthy of the good things that happened to us that would come our way eventually. We all wanted to be happy somehow. Can you relate to any of that? Shaking some heads, right? Do you relate to it? Okay, good. I don't feel so alone. But that's where I started. That's where I started. So wherever you are, however you're experiencing living right now, that's where you start. It doesn't have to be where you stay, but it has to be where you start. Or continue. We're all continuing, right? But sometime in my early 30s, after my daughter was born with some special medical issue and needs, and I went through a very painful divorce, I grew more and more curious about how life could be better. How could I make it feel better? And I have been in therapy for about 5 or 6 years, trying to heal my childhood wounding, trying to find my way. And my therapist sent me to a monastery to sit in contemplation and to think for myself instead of listening to all these voices out here and all the things I could see on television and everything. She's like, go think for yourself. Stop and think. And she gave me books to read. She started recommending books. Some of those books are actually still on my shelf. Some of them might not be out there in the lending library because I would love for other people to read them too. And then Oprah. Oprah was my thing, man. I watched Oprah every day. And she started to laugh because it's true. She started featuring spiritual writers on her show, and more books came my way. And so I started reading more enlightened thoughts and better things, right? And that reading and exploring led me to find a place where those kinds of writers were doing workshops and classes and speaking and things like that. And eventually I found the Center for Spiritual Living in Seattle. One of our visitors is from Seattle. And I began to claim some of that wisdom for myself. And the shifts started to happen. And it has never stopped. So I want to share in kind of in a summary form some of the teachings that literally changed everything for me. And probably the most impactful soul perspective that I found for myself early was the concept of oneness. Oneness. So that started actually when I walked into the sanctuary in Seattle. They had the flags of every religion hanging from the rafters, basically. And coming from a religion where everything other than ours was wrong, the fact that they honored every religion in that sanctuary moved me. So it started, this oneness concept started understanding that all these flags are representing one power, one thing, right? Called by many names, but one thing. One God, really? Like, really? That was hard for me. But that's why that song that we sing almost every Sunday, One Power, means so much to me, because that shifted an understanding of oneness for me. That's why that banner I had made for the foyer is important to me, because it honors every path, whatever you're on. It's okay, right? And once I realized that I could accept all religions and the believers of those religions, and that they're worthy of my respect, I transferred that sense of oneness to the whole human race, right? Regardless of visible differences, cultural differences, lifestyle differences, differences in guiding values, economic differences, political differences, whatever kind of imaginary lines we draw between groups of people, I realized that was just all human illusions and man-made differences. It was all just made up stuff. Oneness was truer than division, and compassion became the foundation of my life. And if you struggle to accept other people and their life choices, working on learning and understanding and claiming the truth of oneness can change everything, right? Questions? Go ahead. Okay. Another shift for me was away from judgment toward radical acceptance and forgiveness. Okay, I had closely held the understanding that hurt people, and healed people, heal people, and I wanted to be a healer. I wanted to be someone who had a positive impact on other people. And so I knew I needed to heal myself. And I did my best to stop hurting other people with my judgments, with my condescending viewpoints, my anger, my fear. I wanted to stop hurting other people. I realized that words hurt just as much, if not more, than physical blows. I also accepted the concept that words held in my mind that never come out my mouth are still harmful. Especially harmful to me, to my inner self, right? When others made mistakes, I accepted the reality that it isn't my job to punish them or correct them or balance anything about them. My job was to forgive them. And actually my job was to love them. Not easy, but I still practice. So if you hear yourself judging other people or the circumstances around you and you're getting angry at all of them, a forgiveness and acceptance practice might be a good starting point to shift from the human to the soul. Then I began to look at every life experience I was having as a lesson to teach me more about God or love. In everything I'm experiencing, can I find a way to love myself in that experience? And can I find a way to love everybody else involved? Could I see in my reflection the circumstances and see where I was falling short of love. If my soul called this person or this experience into my life, why? Why is this happening in my life was the question. Not, and what, more importantly than why is, what is this calling me to learn? What is this calling forth from me? What is mine to learn or do? What is the good that this has come to deliver to me? Because I had to find it. If goodness was at the root of everything, because God was at the root of everything, I challenged myself to find it. Finding love often meant turning to forgiveness practice for myself and the other people. And again, radical forgiveness is still my practice. So if you think of yourself as unlucky, or that life is very hard, or you feel like the victim of circumstances, see if you can shift to looking at the lesson or the hidden blessing in everything that's going on. That's the soul perspective. Another spiritual truth that shifted everything was when I learned of my own power to interact with the universe around me. If I wanted more of something, I needed to focus on it. I needed to focus on it in a positive way. Think about it, talk about it, write about it, be grateful for it. And by doing so, I could draw more of that to me, especially feelings of love, peace, and joy and balance. I didn't really care what brought those qualities to me. If I felt love and peace and joy and balance, bring it on, whatever it is. I wanted more of it. And on the other hand, if I wanted less of something, like frustration or obstacles or disappointment or fear, I could remove my focus from those things by not talking about them, not complaining about them, not thinking about them, or amplifying them in any way. And those things would somehow drift out of my life. Not, they didn't disappear today, but all of a sudden I realized, well, that person doesn't even work here anymore. Or things had shifted and I wasn't having that frustration anymore. My soul's connection to the all, to the universe, was powerful. It was almost magical. I don't use that word very often except for this summer, but it was powerful. And I began to practice purposeful manifestation. And I set higher and higher intentions for my life. And to this day, I still practice purposeful creativity, and cooperation with the universe around me is a given. So as you learn more about the spiritual laws and principles that we teach around here, go ahead, start testing them for yourself. Make some positive changes in your life. If you get stuck, get a practitioner to help you think of a higher perspective. And finally, I shifted my purpose in my life. Remember my description of my early life. In my early adulthood, I thought the purpose of life was to accumulate wealth and possessions and people and win this game. To be a good person, to die happy at an old age. That's what I thought the purpose was. My purpose had nothing to do with my soul. It was a very human purpose. And over the years, I began to understand that my purpose was to live as my soul, as my best self in every moment, bringing light and love to whatever situation I found myself in as I went. My purpose was to generously share my goodness with the world around me by allowing that universal flow of love to come through me. The flow of time and resources, money and affection and strength, to let that flow through me out into the world to the things that gave me joy. And I want to emphasize 3 words I said: over the years. These shifts have occurred over the years. I really got this message from the Science of Mind textbook, which has guided me in my shifting. Ernest Holmes wrote, "What we demonstrate today, tomorrow, and the next day is not as important as the tendency with which our thought is taking the dominant attitude of our mind. If every day things are a little better, a little happier, a little more harmonious, a little more health-giving and joyous, if each day we're expressing more life, we are going in the right direction. So if we are going to go in the right direction, and if we're going to live the magic of our soul, We've got to use these practices to help us stay centered as we deal with whatever life has to offer us. What are those practices? Meditation, prayer, affirmations. Using those, we can shift the habitual human thoughts that we all have to being more grounded, and we can watch as we put our soul in the driver's seat of our life. Our soul will always take us to things a little happier, a little better, a little harmonious, just like Ernest Holmes pointed out. So my final point is, you are a soul, whether you know it or not, whether you identify with that concept or not, and your soul is eternally part of the one life that is being lived in this moment and forevermore. And the more you identify with that highest self inside you, the better and easier your life can be. There is always a higher perspective to take. And I share my story today not because it's special, because it is not special. It's a typical story of a young woman who woke up and realized that she was living a version of herself that was not satisfactory to her, and she was seeking a better way through life by getting to know herself far beyond her personality and her circumstances. And along the way, she learned to love herself more and to love others more, her neighbors and herself, day by day by day. And things got a little bit better every day. So these next 6 weeks can be absolutely transformational in your world. I hope you'll dive into the book with us, whether you take the class or not, is immaterial. Magic of the Soul, Patrick Harpula, read it. And I'm going to invite Vicki to sing the next song, and then Rich will do the offering and all that. And if you've texted some questions, I'll look at the phone, and then I'll come up after the offering and I will try to answer your questions. So please ask questions. Yes, so let me get to these questions. You guys have asked some amazing questions. So this is the center's phone, not mine. And these are all anonymous. It has the phone number. I don't know who any of these are. So the first one is this. Regarding the science of mind teachings, could we also call them the science of soul, or even the science of divine love? If yes, what is the relationship of the soul to the mind? So the science of mind used to be called the science of mind and spirit, and it's kind of gotten shortened to the science of mind. So yes, you could call it the science of whatever, the science of God, the science of the universe, because what Ernest Holmes did was he realized there was a golden thread that ran through every religious thought and science and philosophy and ancient philosophy and myths and all of that. They're all telling the same story. They're all talking about the same energy. So whatever you wanted to call it would be fine. What is the relationship of the soul to the mind? You know, we talked in Sacred Cup this morning that we don't really know exactly where in the magic suit the soul lives, right? And it could very well be a part of the mind. You have a couple of different layers of mind that you're working with. One part of your mind is connected to the mind of the all. You know, think about this. Think about when there's a scientist in Bulgaria working on something, and there's a scientist in Los Angeles working on something. They will almost always come to a solution or a medicine or whatever almost at the same time. So that's an illustration that we're connected to the human consciousness, the mind of the all. You know, it's like people write a song and then another person will write almost the same song. It's like, how did that happen? It's because we are connected to a bigger mind. So the reason why Ernest Holmes used the word science is because he wanted to, at the time he was writing, there was a lot of superstition in religion. You know, if you do this way and this way and this way, then this is what happens. He wanted to help people understand that it wasn't superstitious, it was actually scientific, that there are laws involved. So I hope I answered the question. If not, see me afterwards and ask it in a different way. But I did my best. This question is, how do you manage financial dishonesty towards you? How do you manage financial dishonesty towards you? So there's another question about forgiveness, so I think it'll be part of this. So one of the things that I encourage you to understand is that there is great balance. There is balance when you back up far enough, there is balance. When you're right here in something, it might not seem that there is balance, but when you back up, there is. So financial dishonesty is basically just one way that humans can cheat each other, wrong each other. And financial dishonesty or any kind of dishonesty is a part of that whole experience of being human. And so how do you handle it? Radical forgiveness. Understanding that I use this phrase in Sacred Cup this morning. You know the scripture, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, right? Anytime when we're reading a Bible, we use the word law instead of Lord because we understand that there's a metaphysical, there's a bigger principle going on that is guided by law. So when you say vengeance is mine, saith the law, that means that the law of circulation, the law of cause and effect, the law of balance will always come to play. Will you be there to witness the writing or the balancing of this? Maybe or maybe not. It may not even happen in this lifetime. But personally, I wouldn't waste my energy on it. I would say, well, this happened to me actually, now that I think of it. I won't get into all the circumstances, but that haunted me, that cheating, that dishonesty, and it was actually an $11,000 thing, so I know exactly how much it was. See, it's still there. And I finally just said, my peace of mind is more important. But there's nothing more important to me than my peace of mind. I just won't hold on to anything. So it's like, oh well, she'll get her own someday, somewhere, whatever. Okay, so that I hope I answered that. If not, again, you can always talk to me personally. How do you balance removing your focus from something that brings you pain or frustration, but maintain your responsibility to act and make a positive difference? When something in the world, maybe it's on the news or something that is bothering you, an injustice in the world or whatever, and it brings you pain and frustration, go within and ask yourself, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? Is it mine to get out and march with other people to protest this thing? Is it mine to stay and sit with a higher truth of the circumstance? Is it mine to just simply know this will take care of itself and it's not mine to do? You have to decide for yourself and then let other people decide for themselves what is theirs to do. So if we take something like, let's just take child poverty. It's painful, it's frustrating, it's like, why are children hungry? There are people that are going to go out there and work on that behalf and take that's their calling, that's their thing. If it's your thing, follow that thing. If it gives you joy to work on it, to solve those problems, go for it. If it's just pain and frustration for you and you're not going to make a positive difference, try really hard to not think about it because you're only adding negative energy to the problem. Hopefully that helps. Again, if you want a conversation about it, let me know. How do you know where your soul is leading you? And this is a couple of questions are like this. How do you know where your soul is leading you? Sometimes it seems I have been led into a difficult experience that I truly felt I was guided to. Okay, so remember I said that the soul uses the magic suit and uses everything in this world to have experiences, to gain experiences. Guess what? Human experiences are hard. They're messy. They're difficult. They're challenging. No one promised you a rose garden. Remember that song? Can you sing? No, I'm just kidding. I never promised you a rose garden. In other words, life is about learning. If you think back to your education years, a long time ago, really long time ago, not for you, but a long time ago, we'll remember the things you learned the most were the things you had to work hard to learn, right? The things that really, really stuck with you are the hardest lessons. You hated those difficult teachers, but when you look back, you're like, oh my God, I learned so much from that person, right? So life is the same way. I'll take my daughter for an example. Having a special needs child was so difficult. I felt totally led to have that child. I knew I was going to have a baby when I was in like first grade. Not a husband, but a baby, but that's beside the point. But I knew I was led to being a mother, and it has turned out to be one of the most difficult experiences of my life, the most challenging things, but I've learned so much. So yes, you are going to be led into human challenges that you will learn from. Where is your soul leading you? Where you find purpose, where you find meaning, where you find joy and love, and when you feel alive. If you're bored, you're not where your soul wants you to be, I can tell you that. If you're coasting, just, going through life, ho-de-do-de-do, you're not listening, because life is supposed to be a stretch. What did you say?
I know her. Deep and meaningful words.
That's right. Only what I for you. This question is, for manifesting, can you focus on it once and let it go, or do you need to have continued focus on it? It depends. It really depends. It depends on how convicted you are in your prayer, or in your desire, or in your ask, if you will. For me, most of the time, if you have to keep choosing it, meaning, I need to try to find an example. Keep aligning your choices with what it is you say you want. So if you say, I want peace, okay, I want peace, then you've got to keep making choices towards peace. And most of us say, I want this, but then I choose everything but that, over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's when you will manifest when you focus and on nothing but that. You don't talk about anything but that. You continue to choose it. 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 So the more you focus on what it is you really want and ignore what you don't want, you're going to move towards it faster. Again, get with a practitioner and work with them, because it means changing your thoughts. I know y'all have follow-up questions, and I'm not going to, oh gosh, there's more blue dots. Okay, hang on. Thanks for letting us know how you got to be so awesome. Oh, we are blessed by your journey. I'm blessed by my journey. Thank you. Let's see. What is your forgiveness practice? That's the word for the day. See if you get bonus points if you can use it in conversation. What is your forgiveness practice? Forgiveness, I took a class by Edwina Gaines on forgiveness, and she taught me this thing called 70 times 70. There's something in the Bible that says forgive 70 times 70. And she had us write down, we had a thing that we needed to forgive, and she made us write it for 70 days, 70 times. I forgive whatever. I forgive the Hody-Do girl. The financial thing, that would be a perfect thing to work with, whoever's that is. Write it 70 times for 70 days. I forgive blank for that $11,000. I forget. And by the time you get to that 68th day, you're like, I don't forgive this, so I don't have to do this anymore. I laugh, but it really, you do get to see how absurd it is that you're focusing so much time and energy on something so, like, let it go. You just start saying let it go. But in a more kind of serious way, I truly believe in letters. I have written so many letters to my deceased father. For every time I think of something that is still like a pain, I can write a letter to him. And what I do is I acknowledge the shortcomings of that other person and how they may have gotten those shortcomings. Like, I know my father's background and how he was raised and all that, and I know where he came from. So it's like, it's almost, you begin to have compassion. People who, cause pain in other ways, always know people were doing the best they can do. They think they're making the best decision. And we're hardwired to make the best decision we know how to make. So when people make a crappy decision, they thought it was going to turn out good, but it didn't, right? And so you begin to take things less personally, and yeah, forgiveness is a whole thing. There's lots and lots. If you really want to know forgiveness, Google it, look up books, read, become an expert on forgiveness. If you think that's your thing, become an expert on it. For that matter, anything that you want to master, become an expert about it. How do you stay on the path when you start feeling exhausted from always trying to be mindful and aware of your practices? You move one step forward and old habits and patterns sneak in and push you 3 steps back. Print that quote by Ernest Holmes. What is the tendency of your life? Is your overall life tending to be a little happier, a little brighter, a little better, a little life affirming? There you go. You come up, take a picture of it. But that is what keeps me going. I remember when I was really young and I said, why do I care about this and why doesn't anybody else care? Why am I the one who has to carry this responsibility? Nobody else is. And I realized that my life belongs to me. You know, I'm going to do this work for me. So do I get tired? Yeah. And I'm not perfect. Ask Terry. I'm not perfect. I mean, you know, I have to turn to practice, don't I? I mean, I can get been out of shape about something, and she doesn't do this, but because she's like, are you going to practice what you're pretty tiny? But actually, several years ago in my life, I realized I wasn't walking my talk. I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. And I had to make really big radical changes to live my walk, to walk this. So it is tiring, but you just keep going because your life is better. Because if stopping practicing, stopping staying awake, you just kind of go back downhill, and that's no good. Several things. How do you know what is the best direction of decision or choice to make for your soul and life? As I said, follow your joy, follow your energy. Whenever you're doing something that you get lost in, that's probably something that is leading you. How do we know what we are to learn from each life experience? It's all about love. It's always about love. What am I not loving here? How am I not loving myself? How am I judging myself? How am I not loving someone else? Because it's all, what am I afraid of? And how do I get to love? That's your lesson in it. When or how did the one power, where or how did the one power of God begin? If I could answer that question, that is one of the mysteries of life. Just like one of the mysteries of life is what happens after we die. There are lots of theories, there are lots of ideas, but it doesn't matter to me where it came from or how it came from or where we go, all of that. It matters what I believe about it. And what I believe about both ends of the spectrum, how things began and how things will end, it's all love. It's all good. There is nothing about life that is not good. So it's had to be from goodness and into goodness. Other than that, I can't answer that question. I'm smart, but I'm not that smart, y'all. What are your thoughts on karma? Karma is an Eastern religion concept that we accumulate. I'll just use really loose words. Sorry, Buddhist and Hindu people that understand it better than I do. But you accumulate bad energy when you do bad things, and you accumulate good energy when you do good things, and then karma balances us all out. So Ernest Holmes would talk about the law of balance, that everything will always be in balance, everything always is in balance. And so karma is about saying that we were taught in ministerial school, we transmute karma when we create anyway, when we love anyway. So we may have, Ernest Holmes believed you could transmute karma. You're not stuck in your karma. You're not stuck in anything. Once you change your belief about yourself and your mind and your concept of yourself, you can transcend karma or energy that you have created or whatever you've stirred up. That's really, really convoluted answer. But basically what it is that when you can move from that stuck place to love, you're transmuting karma, your belief in yourself. Is that good? I don't know. That was about as good as I could get on that one. So
That's a Sunday talk.
that's a whole talk, right? So what I do want to say though is that this is not the last time we're going to do this. Next week, Reverend Dieter is actually, and thank you, those were your questions. Next week, Reverend Dieter is going to do the same thing. Okay, so one of the things that he and I are realizing is he wants you all to get to know him better, and he wants to get to know you all better. So he's going to do something similar to this so that you can ask your question, and he's going to open this text line up again to answer your questions next week. And if we find this method to be helpful and you enjoy it, then we can do this more frequently as well. So if you enjoy this kind of conversation with me, come to Sacred Cup. This is what we do every Sunday at what is it, 9:15 we start. It's about a 30-minute conversation similar to this. We bring up a topic and then we kind of talk it through. So if you like this, it's here.